Welcome to Trust the Journey. I'm Melanie Curtis.
And I'm Jason Moletsky.
Thank you, legit, for joining us today.
Now, our mission is living and learning, laughing and loving together with you.
We're here to grow and contribute through our practice of openness, honesty, vulnerability, humility, and trust, trusting the entire journey.
Yeah, and on that journey, we often talk about plant medicines, psychedelics, and other avenues of healing. When we do, we are sharing for informational purposes only. We're not doctors or therapists, and we don't promote doing anything illegal.
Inside us all, we have a deep, powerful knowing. We encourage curiosity, healing, and exploration of this consciousness.
Damn straight. Together, our handle is trustthejourney.today. Individually, you can find her at melaniecurtis.com and me at jasonmoletsky.com.
Thank you all again so much for being with us. On to the show. Right on, family. Okay, in today's episode, we are thrilled. And by we, I mean me, and I mean us. We are thrilled to welcome Mike Finoia. Mike is a stand-up comedian based out of New York City. He is a senior producer of TruTV's Impractical Jokers and Impractical Jokers Inside Jokes. He tours the country opening for the Jokers on their theater and arena tours. Mike also hosts two podcasts, Come a Time, co-hosted by Dead & Company's bassist Oteil Burbridge, and Dented Cans, in which Mike interviews fellow comics about their respective, quote, dents. Recently, Mike has spoken publicly about his personal mental health journey and how psychedelic integration has, quote, saved his life. He continues to speak about his journey on stage, on air, and wherever else it helps. Mike released his debut stand-up special, Don't Let Me Down, in winter 2023 on YouTube, amassing 100,000 views and growing. It was 109,000 as of this morning. I've seen it. It's amazing. Definitely check it out. Mike, welcome.
Welcome to the show.
Hi, how are you? That was hard to listen to.
It's so hard to listen to. It's like absolutely torture to listen to one harpy. Totally. Well, really, man, we're so happy to have you here. And we're definitely going to get into your mental health journey and all that stuff. I want to share just with our listeners that I was listening to your interview on psychedelics today, and I was just so moved and compelled to reach out to you and just let you know that how much I loved that interview. I personally am a absolute lover of comedy as well. And so I was very drawn to you personally. I'm like, I just got to write this guy, tell him it was awesome, and just to, offer the show if he wants to come on and share some more with our peeps. So I want to start there with comedy and be like, why comedy for you? Which I know is probably a huge question, but tell us more about that relative. What does it give you? What does it bring you? Just take us there.
Why comedy for me? Well, I had a lot of lives before it, and it's the first job where I wanted more work. I wanted all the work. I think every other profession or whatever, road I took or something, it was always kind of like, can I call out today? And with stand-up, it's just like, give me all the gigs, give me all the opportunities. And I just want it. I think about it all the time. It makes me happy. I used to be extremely extroverted. And since doing stand-up, I have found that that's the place where I like to be extroverted. And then the rest of my life, I like to be a little more introverted now. And that was a complete paradigm shift in my life where before I could never be alone. And now it's like, I cannot wait to be alone. So I love stand-up, and I love the fact that I've gotten to perform in so many of these beautiful rooms around the country and with some of my heroes, and just the fact that I don't want to say my fate or destiny is in my hands, but I'm a small business, and the more I put in, the more I get out. And everything I've built up to in life, I think, has like given me lessons on how to approach this weird world of comedy. Because like nobody gives you a book and says, here's how you become a comic.
Yeah.
You know, you kind of learn along the way, and you learn what not to do, maybe more than what you learn to do. And 99% of it is 80% of it I'd say is off stage.
Yeah, right,
you know,
right.
like being a professional and learning how to navigate the road, and you know, sometimes learning to say no to gigs, and learning that it's an amazing process. And I've a very smart woman told me that comedy and comedians, it's like the amount of years that you're in it is like your age. So when you're like in it 2 years, you're like a 2-year-old.
Yeah, right.
And when you're in it 9 years, you're like a 9-year-old. And, you know, I'm in my teenage years now, and I'm kind of like, all right. Like I look back and I'm like, yeah, I was a kid then, and I had my terrible twos, and I was jealous and all that. But now it's like, all right, I'm getting my license, and I'm starting to drive, and getting a little freedom out there. And so it's amazing, and I'm honored to be able to do it.
Yeah.
I'm curious,
day,
who were some of your heroes in comedy?
Well, Dave Oteil is my all-time favorite. He's just I don't know, he's a poet. He's like this weird, brilliant genius. I don't know if you guys are familiar with his work, but just the fact that like I get to know him is cool. And then for him to like me enough to like bring me out on the road and perform him and I together, and him to like recommend me for things and talk about, he went on a podcast and told some people that he you know, liked my stuff, and it means the world to me. Like I watched Insomniac, that was his TV show on Comedy Central. I like, my grandfather loved it, and we would watch it, and he's like, this guy's so cool, like he's just talking to normal people and whatever. And that was just a bonding moment that I had with my grandfather. And now, like, which shows how cool my grandfather is, not how old the show is, by the way. My grandfather's the coolest. So it wasn't like a dig on how old Dave's show is. It's a nod to my pop. So, yeah, Dave is one I'd say right there. I mean, obviously I've gotten to, you know, I work at the clubs in the city and stuff, so I've gotten to know and meet and work with, like, you know, Chappelle and Chris Rock and God, you name it. I mean, really, Sebastian Maniscalco, I had the chance to work with a little bit. He brought me out to open for him a couple times. The Impractical Jokers, I mean, that was date night for my wife and I, was to like order in and watch the Jokers, and then to be able to work on the show and share the stage with them. And you know, they've brought me to do Radio City Music Hall and all these beautiful arenas around the country. It's quite an honor.
Amazing.
You know?
You know, one of the things that I think is so interesting about comedy is I think it's similar to skydiving in that it's very fringe, and psychedelics for that matter. It's like this fringe thing where you actually have the opportunities to meet your heroes and work with them, and then basically live the rest of your life being like, wait, I work with Jason Maletsky? What? You know what I'm totally serious. Like my business partner is Amy Shemalecki. What? You know, so I feel that. I really feel like I resonate with that in the lane of skydiving, but also there's something about being in fringe communities that draw. Anyway, I'm very interested in that too. But Jay, I want to give you a chance to weigh in as well.
Yeah, there's something I wanted to put on the table here for Mike to give me his thoughts on, and it's came up recently for me. My last ayahuasca ceremony, something that really bubbled to the surface was in relationship to like George Carlin and Bill Hicks and these truth tellers, right? Like the comedian has this, it's the only person in society who is allowed to stand up with a microphone and tell the world the truth straight on, no lies, just this is the truth of the world we're living in.
Yeah, I agree, and I think that I think music can too, in a way.
Yeah,
but
true.
I do think that comedy, it's a strange world that we're in right now, where the internet and podcasting and platforms and being able to clip you know, little snippets of shows and post them, and caption them and communicate with audiences and stuff like that, I think we're able to reach a lot of people. And I think it's what we do with it that matters. There's folks that want to rattle cages. There's folks that want to, stay goofy. There's poets, there's wordsmiths, there's crowd work folks, there's, then just silly people. And it's all, it's all there now, and it's all accessible, where Carlin and Pryor and Lenny Bruce and, Doug Stanhope and those guys, like they're you almost kind of had to seek it out more. And when you sought it out, you realized, like, oh my God, there's a whole other world of intellect and a whole other world of, honesty and vulnerability. And it's an honor to have that opportunity and responsibility, and to just touch upon the psychedelic world, the mental health thing, I hit a pretty rough slide, and then coming out of it, looking back, starting to talk about it on stage, and I'm going up sort of to skydiving, like I'm at the ledge there, and I'm like, I kind of asked someone to push me, because I have to figure out how to land. And that's where the interesting part of stand-up is, like, different than music. With stand-up, you release your album or your special, and you don't tour and do that material. You start over. So, like, you tour the material and then release the special, and then you start over again. So it's this thing where a band will, like, release an album and tour the material. We have to tour the material and then release the album.
Yeah.
So when you're seeing us out there, you're looking at, like, maybe the first trimester or the second trimester. Like, there may be a little bump, but it's not like, here's my baby, you know? So we're figuring it out as we go. And what I've been thoroughly enjoying is just stating what I have or what I've gone through, and talk about the experiences and the revelations, and trying to make it funny. And after shows, at least one or two people coming up and going, like, I really appreciate you bringing this up. Men too, like grown, tough dudes, neck tattoos and UFC, like big dudes, and just coming up and going, like, I hit a rough patch too, and it's really awesome that you're talking about this and whatever. And that to me is like, I think I'm on to something here, like, I'm happy with what I've put out, and I'm happy with my special and all that, but you kind of have to put that aside and what's next,
Yeah.
I watched Chris Rock. I get the opportunity in New York to work at the Comedy Cellar, and, like, watch these guys go in, and Chris Rock will stand on stage and go, like, what to talk about. And I've heard him say, like, every year he looks at it like, who am I this year? And that's we should all be asking ourselves that question, comic or not, accountant, taxi driver, I mean, you name it. Who am I this year?
Yeah.
So I've tried to kind of take that mantra on, and I like that I can be vulnerable and help people. It's almost what I used to be afraid of. Now I'm addicted to.
Yeah. It's interesting. I commend you for that, because I'm currently very interested in this notion of coming out of the psychedelic closet, as it were, right? That's a whole thing, because for you, it's connected to your sort of position of influence and your career, your well-being, your livelihood. So there's a lot of stakes connected to that, while also a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong for sure, Mike, that compulsion to serve, to share, to that what you're doing is making a difference. Even if you don't know, you're like, something in me is telling me this, I need to and want to be a voice in this way. Cool. And why I touch on that is that coming out of the psychedelic closet, what have you learned? Because people, I think, who are listening maybe aren't professional comedians, or maybe it's not connected to their work, like Jay and myself and you, But what would you say to people who are like, man, I want to start talking about this too?
Well, I'd say the first thing that I would say is that I try to always make sure that I make it clear that I'm only speaking for myself. Okay, like I'm not a medical professional, and that I'm not someone who's recommending anything to everyone. I think that if it's something that interests you, or if things that you've tried aren't working, here's another option that has absolutely saved my life. And I think that's important because I tend to shy away from preachers. I tend to shy away from anyone who kind of feel like I don't want to be preachy. Anything that was preached at me, that's why like I love the Grateful Dead. But if you don't like the Grateful Dead, like that's cool. Like I'm not going to try to convert you. Like you go ahead and listen to your thing. But if you're in my car, we're probably listening to the Dead.
Perfect.
So I guess my point is that like I always try to make sure that like I'm speaking in first person. I'm talking about my experience, you know, and in coming, and I love saying that, coming out of the mental health closet is
that's a big one right there.
Important. Yeah, so I think that me saying, I mean, I have extremely debilitating bouts of depression and panic and fear and anxiety, and I have for a very big chunk of my life. And some of it is due to trauma, some of it is due to self-doubt and criticism, and a lot of it is magnified by my fear of like letting people down or letting myself down or not being good enough, that imposter thing, you know? But I've always known ever since I was younger that there's something more than this, whatever this may have been in that time, you know? And to answer your question and not dovetail way off, what I've noticed is that as I talk about it, two things are happening. People are saying, me too. Like, so I'm reinforcing that I'm not alone, but I'm also helping other folks realize that they're not alone, right? And I'm making myself find the humor in the fear and in the pain. And I'm also really finding that, like, it's important to continue. It's almost kind of like giving me like the, what do you call it? Like the reassurance that I could trust this process. I could trust this path with material. I could trust this path with like talking about it openly on podcasts and so on and so forth. What do I have to be ashamed of? What do I have to be afraid of? Like I have a herniated disc in my back currently. And the thing that I love is that if I say it, everybody's got an opinion. Everybody's got a doctor. Everybody's got, do I do a surgery or an epidural? Do I do, heat? Do I do ice? Like all this. So it's like, if I don't ask, if I don't put it out there, the universe won't kind of send me who I need to speak to. So I know we're all hurting. I know we're all struggling with something. Our critics take different form. So if I could just say it, I'm putting it out there. I'm popping that balloon. I've always had a theory that like anxiety and depression and stuff is double magnified because we have our anxiety and we have our depression, and then we have anxiety about the anxiety and depression about the depression.
Correct.
Because we're going, do I seem depressed? Do I seem anxious? So the minute you walk into a situation, you go, hey, I'm anxious right now. It cuts it in half.
Yeah.
Because I don't have to pretend like I'm okay. You know what I mean? So I've realized right away, like I say it on stage, like.
Yeah. When you get up on stage, I mean, my experience has been I've had panic attacks with a microphone in my hand. And I feel like as soon as I say, wow, I'm really freaking out right now, a lot of the tension drops. So is that one of your tactics in order to 100%. Feel comfortable there? Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and I'm not even talking about on stage. I'm talking about getting blood work done
Yeah.
or sitting on a plane that's delayed or in a subway in Manhattan that's stuck between stops, like just day-to-day things. I kind of go like, yeah, I'm feeling a little anxious right now. And then other people go, oh my God, me too. And it's like, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I'm not lost here. Like, you feel it too. So it normalizes it for everybody, but also it lets me be anxious. You know, like if you're nervous about being nervous, you're extra nervous.
Yeah, totally.
So,
I
I mean,
Mike, it's funny. I'm a life coach. That's the other thing that I do. And I've been doing that for about 16 years. Why I bring that up is that I only in reflecting on that 16 years of all of those conversations, does what you just said, like did what you just said become very, very clear. Like I have heard so many people over the years reflect to me struggles that I have had. And so I'm like, I fucking know that I'm not alone. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like I know. And it isn't also because I've been brave and like you started to be like, what can I say that's true and real? Back to the comedy thing, but also back to the bravery, the coming out of the mental health closet. It's like,
yeah,
that is such a big deal to like, know we're not alone. Know that we're not a big fat loser because we're freaking out, you know?
yeah, yeah. It's so interesting to hear that because, you know, prior to, I'd call it like whatever, this most recent experience or renaissance or whatever,
Right.
kind of, I was doing a program with college kids where I would talk to them about, I had horrible anxiety and learning disabilities, and I don't know about learning. I couldn't focus. I couldn't pay attention. But I had to like put myself through college, and it was a very unorthodox experience. I didn't have the college experience. I like worked full time, went to class at night, paid for it, lived off campus, drove in, commuted, had cars stall on the way to class, like all these different things. And I just wanted these, I always had this notion that I would look at someone sitting next to me in class and be like, man, they just all have it so together. Like it seems so easy for everybody else. Why is it so hard for me? And then I would like talk to them and they're like, oh my God, man, I am struggling so much. And I'm like, dude, I thought you had it. So I would talk to college kids and just be like, listen, everyone is struggling. Like, as alone as you feel, I promise you, you're not alone. And I think that I felt alone for so much and so long that I think it's extremely important, whether it's 3 friends at lunch or a theater of people, we're all in this together, you know? And during one of my bigger mushroom experiences I've had recently, I had this kind of light bulb moment of like, and I've said this on a couple podcasts, but like love and fear, you know, the only 2 things that are real are love and fear. And if you are operating from fear, you're not open to the love that's around you. You'll look right through it. But if you're operating from love, fear doesn't stand a chance. Like it literally is like, there's a scene in The Waterboy. I don't know if you've seen that
Yes.
movie with Adam Sandler. And he visualized an attack, and like Coach Klein, like he's looking across the field at the other coach that he's always been afraid of, and he has like the head of a baby. And all of a sudden he realizes like, I don't have anything to be afraid of, because he visualizes. So if you're operating from love, fear is like, you kind of like, it's cute more than anything. It's like, I don't have to be scared of you, you know? So I've been trying very hard to like, okay, how do I take that? Because in that experience, in that trip, I literally was able to kind of like rapid fire, like categorize the big things in my life into love or fear. Like, is this coming from love? Is this coming from fear? And then I knew what to work on. So it was amazing. I was like able to kind of like spring clean,
You know,
my
Mike,
soul, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I've had a lot of insights in this same area. Like, these 2 topics have been highly relevant parts of my spiritual journey, my opening and growing as a person, understanding the relationship of polarity in our lives, in this world, and how those polarities relate to these concepts of love and fear. And a deep insight that came up for me recently, well, actually while I was on a treadmill, was that when we're speaking when we're in fear, it's our ego that is speaking. And when we are in love, and that's our state of resistance, right? That's a closing down, it's a pushing away, it's a tightening up. And when we're in a state of receiving, of acceptance, of conducting, of abundance, then we're speaking from our soul body, and we're speaking in love. And these are two different elements of the self, right? One of them is eternal, and one of them is finite, and it is locked into this specific body, this journey called Jason right now. And Jason's ego thinks he needs to protect himself and close down and fight his way through it. And Jason's soul knows that he's immortal and doesn't die, and it's a huge piece. I want to throw one more word salad on the table for us to mix up a little bit, because it popped up while you were talking.
Me too.
And I think it's the mental health fallacy, right? It is a fallacy that the person next to you has good mental health and that you have, questionable mental health. And we all live in this idea that everybody else's mental health is most likely better than mine, except for the homeless person. And the homeless person, their mental health sucks, and we put ourselves in between this two places of like, if I go any worse, I'm on the street. If I get any better, I'm perfect, like, my role model of mental health. And truly, everybody's on the spectrum of just like continually changing and oscillating based on what we had for dinner, or how well we're feeling because of an emotional experience, or whatever the last thing to kickstart our emotional roller coaster has been.
Yeah, that's very true. And it's an interesting way to, I'd say that through the work of, the process of the last year and a half, I think one of the things that I've taken from what, my experiences, that I'm happy to get into.
Yeah, please do. And that's, I was wanting to go there next, honestly, Mike. So if it naturally, you want to go into telling us more how you got on your mental health healing journey, please go there.
Sure. I couldn't agree though, Jason, I couldn't agree more. I think that it's that thing of kind of like perception is reality. And when you already have a critic in your head, I have found, and I'm trying to work on material about this, that like, I almost enjoy being let down because it reinforces that like I shouldn't trust anyone. Like I almost like, if you tell me you're going to be on time and you're late, I'm like, of course I'm not worth being on time for. You know what I mean? And it's just that pre-existing, why would I ever trust another human to do what they say they're going to do? Now, what's that? That's just that default. That's the record playing the same song over and over, So to be able to kind of blow the dust off. Oteil and I were talking about it on our podcast about how like one of the ways I like to think about it is like if you look in a mirror that hasn't been dusted, the dust has just the all the little lint and dead skin, and it blurs the reflection, So when you finally like take some Windex and wipe it down, it's like, oh, it's clear now, and I could see what this really is. So every now and then we just need to dust off our lens, and I think psychedelics kind of do that. But so I've been doing psychedelics for a long time, but recreationally and carelessly for most of my childhood. Not by childhood, I mean like, 17 through like my, maybe 30s, just going to concerts, taking drugs and all great stuff. But I mean, I drank alcohol with psychedelics, which I feel that's what I mean by careless. It wasn't fasting, taking them in the morning for a purpose.
With intention, ceremonial context, none of that going on.
Right. Yeah. I mean, at concerts and, I spent all my free time at Fish concerts, and music's a massive part of my life, and, meet some mushrooms and go hiking and stuff, of course, but not ceremoniously, not as a tool for mental health. more just a tool for fun.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
spiritual
And it always
journey with the musical experience or the deep nature experiences are definitely a spiritual journey, but they don't have the same structure as like an eyes closed meditation where you're looking inward at whatever part of ourselves we're wanting to bring up and navigate or negotiate with. Sometimes that shit comes up for us in our recreational space, whether we want it to or not.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, I had an amazing conversation with a friend of mine who recently went to Alice Cooper, a comedian, hilarious guy, Big J Okerson, one of my best friends and brothers. He took a mushroom chocolate at a Alice Cooper, and I forget who else the other band was. I'm sorry, it's escaping me. But he just had such a beautiful experience. Like it was just he was giggling and having a great time and having fun, profound thoughts. And he was just like, it was just the greatest. He's like, I couldn't wait to tell you about it. But yeah, it comes on, like, sometimes it's like, you know, it makes the lights a little bit more vivid. And sometimes it, you know, gives us what we need, not what we want, you know? So I love when that happens.
Mike, I have to jump in really quickly and just
please.
do a quick nod to Alice Cooper dropping the Milwaukee joke in Wayne's World. Like, that is just amazing piece of comedy, in my opinion. I just visited Milwaukee, which is why it's new
beautiful
in my life. But yeah, tell us, like, how, take us there to that initial part where you're like, whoa, I need healing. You know what I mean? Like, it's clear to me that I need help. And maybe this is the onset of psychedelics in this more healing context or whatever, but yeah, tell us how that sort of transition happened for you, in case it will resonate with anyone as well.
100%. So since I was about early 20s-ish, I'd say I've been trying antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds, from, you know, Paxil and Wellbutrin and Lexapro and Ritalin and mood stabilizers and all these different things, Xanax for anxiety, all of that. And all it really did was mute or dull the edges. Things weren't so sharp, but horrible side effects, horrible side effects. And it made everything a lot worse in a lot of ways. And some of them I just couldn't tolerate at all physically. So I've always been on this quest to kind of like not be so hard on myself. And again, not operate from fear. And I knew psychedelics, and I knew my wife bought me transcendental meditation as like a gift, probably to her, not me, but as a gift. And I practiced that, and I knew, like I said, I've always knew there's more, you know, somewhere. Now doing stand-up, it's a lonely gig. It's a tough gig. It's a lot of criticism. How come I didn't get that? Am I not good enough? Am I this? Am I that? Perfect buffet of anxiety for the critic, you know? And so you're always running from it. You're always kind of trying to get away from it. And as long as you stay busy and the calendar stays full, you don't have to think about your stuff. So welcome the pandemic. And it kind of felt to me like, emotionally and everything, it was like a car chase my whole life. And then I have to sit alone in fear, and it was like a 10-car pileup. And now I have to sit with the wreckage and assess the damage and sift through the, you know, nuts and bolts. And it was a lot to deal with, and no work, no promise of work, no, who knows if we're ever going to do stand-up again, right? So that was hard for everyone. So there was a collective anxiety, which actually made me feel better. Now, spring of 21, when everything starts to kind of open up again and things are starting to happen, my anxiety doesn't go away, and it's starting to get worse and worse. Now, I'll back up for a moment and say that in the fall of 2020 and the winter of 2020, I did two very important psilocybin journeys, or with one incredible woman who sat with me, and I went in with intention, and I went in with the thought of, I kind of had this analogy of a river where everything there were old tires and old leaves, and the water was rising and kind of flooding the banks, and I wanted to just have a clear river. I wanted to get rid of all the junk, and I had two unbelievably important experiences on those two trips, and cleared out a lot of stuff and had really beautiful, just incredibly amazing experiences. Here's one I had never told anybody. So in an earlier relationship, I thought I was going to be a father, and it turned out didn't happen. And it always bothered me. And during the experience, I kind of had a moment with an angel of some sort, maybe. And that guy let me know, like, I'm over here on this side, and I don't blame you. And I'm kind of watching you from this end. And, it was more detailed than that, but I'm trying to not, get emotional. But anyway, it was one of the most important experiences I've ever had in my life. And I didn't even know that was going to happen. And it was just beautiful. And
Can I pause for right there just for a second? Because you just said one of the key phrases that comes back from the psilocybin trip reports. One of the most important experiences of my life. This is 95% of people who engage in psilocybin in a ceremonial or therapeutic setting. And the context that you just shared with us so beautifully, and thank you for doing that, is I spoke with an angel who assured me that everything's good from the other side. And this allowed me to feel peace and one of the most powerful experiences of my life. And so I'm going to say, I'm okay with allowing a little emotion in the room when that's the kind of experience that we're having. Okay. I'm okay with a little emotion here.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it too, because it's like,
me too.
You can feel the truth. Yeah. Thank you for sharing, Mike.
Thank you for listening. If you're receiving value from this episode, we would love it if you would show your support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and follow us on Instagram. You can click the like button, leave us a comment, or share the podcast with somebody directly.
Every month, we host integration coaching circles. These are safely held spaces for those looking to heal, grow, and connect in community. They are beautiful, alive. So much good work is happening. You are invited to join us. Go to trustthejourney.today/integration. You can join the Trust the Journey family, which includes these integration coaching circles and our private Facebook group where we connect and support each other. Sign up by going to our website, trustthejourney.today, obviously, and click on the orange Patreon button.
Yeah, it's your support and engagement that make the show possible. We love connecting with you. So feel free to DM us anytime on Instagram with your thoughts at trustthejourney.today. And now, back to our regularly scheduled programming.
Yeah, well, thank you for letting me. And I think, obviously I want to practice what I preach here. If I'm going to be vulnerable, why not?
Yeah.
But also, I think that, I don't know if guys have the faculties sometimes to have an opinion or a discussion or something about that whole child. I don't know. It was a decision that was kind of like out of my hands, and I'm okay with that, and I support it, and I'm just kind of like, but I was still kind of like, that would have been cool, and it always kind of was a thing. It was always kind of like a dent, and I was able to kind of like just, I don't know, I'm at peace with it, which is unbelievable. So
is that one of your dented cans?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. So, but hey, maybe that's like, I guess my whole thought process is like, I guess if there's one guy that hears this, anyone, it doesn't have to be a man, but you know what I mean.
Yeah,
if someone hears this and goes like, oh, cool, I'm not the only one that's had to deal with something like that, then all right, great, mission accomplished. Like, we go through the stuff we go through to help each other, I guess, through that stuff, right? So
yeah. And allowing, just like you being willing to take up space with that story, with that feeling as a man, gives other men permission to be like, if they have you up here in any way, if they're looking at you and respecting you or admiring you, that's a huge reason why I feel like this is so important, and why men telling stories, and I say this specifically as a woman who it's quite easy for me to share. I've obviously practiced this. I've worked on being a voice in public spaces and just in my own personal relationships for a long, long time. It's not at all been easy for me either. But I say it from the perspective of like, it seems to me that men definitely they need more examples like that. So that's why I'm like, heck yeah, that sharing. I can't imagine that won't resonate with other people out there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I think also, and I've been having a lot of conversations with dads that are friends of mine. And I think that this notion that, if as long as I do a little bit better than the last generation did, then I'm a good dad. You know what I mean? That's that
right.
thing of kind of like, as long as I can, I had it worse and I'm at least, here and so on.
Uphill both
and
ways.
I think right, that kind of thing. But I've noticed that like a lot of my friends, like when they talk to me about certain stuff, they go, I hope I'm doing a good job. I hope I'm doing this. And I'm like, already you're doing a good job if you hope you're doing a good job, right? And then they go, I get down to that level and I'm saying like, buddy, I don't know. And I'm like, am I supposed to say I don't know to my kid? And I'm like, God, dude, totally. Like, you're showing them it's all right to not know everything. You know what I mean? Like that whole because I said so and do as I say, not, that whole thing. It's like, we got to throw that out the window.
Yeah.
But so that was the beginning of the journey, right? And then I did another trip that was not so great. I never really achieved liftoff, and I had a pretty death centric trip. And not that I thought I was going to die. I just wasn't having a good time. I was trying to control the experience. And I started to think about an uncle I had lost. I started to think about how many people are not with us anymore and all that. And I was talking to the same woman I was working with. And I was like, I'm not having a good time right now. And she's like, but I'm here with you and I see you and you're okay. So we're going to get through it together. And it was rough. It was really rough. And, but we talked through it, and having someone that you can work with and trust is really just the most important thing in the world. So kudos to both of you for what you do. And I really, it's so important. And, so fast forward a little bit to, that was the winter of 2020, spring of 2021. The anxiety and the depression and the panic all kind of hit me extremely hard because the world started to open up and life kind of started to come back. And I was going through stuff that, I don't know how to put it, but it was like almost like I had to dig up a bunch of old stuff and then kind of just got left with it, like sitting on my lap, and I had to kind of reassess and relive a lifetime of stuff. And it really got heavy. And I started to have, this is when my mental health was the worst it's ever been in my entire life.
Wow.
I was very scared. I would wake up at like 3 a.m, literally with my hands in a grip on the mattress, cold sweats. I would go automatically to worst case scenario with like every thought. If my phone rang and it was my friend, I wasn't excited that he was calling. I was like, oh my God, what happened? What did I do? And I would just let it go to voicemail. I would get invited to things and I was like, no, man, I can't. Like, I'm, just horrible, horrible panic. Going out to ice cream with my wife was like a challenge.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get out of the car. It was a mess. And I turned to her, and she's a mental health. I'm not mental health. She's in healthcare, and my sister and my siblings, actually, all of them. And I kind of told them, like, I'm not in a good place right now. And I considered like looking into like going somewhere. Like, I didn't know what to do. And I made an appointment with a psychiatrist that treatment-resistant depression was like what I looked through. I was looking at TMS.
Okay.
I was looking at, anything I possibly could. I made an appointment with her, and the night before I wrote out a list. Every time you go to therapy, they go, tell me about yourself.
Right.
So I made this, and I apologize if I'm repeating something from another podcast or anything, but like I made a list of all of the things that I'd gone through and was feeling and going through, and like I'm sobbing, and it's just, and I made a copy for her and a copy for me, and I went in and I handed it to her, and my goal, what I wrote down, said, I just want to feel okay. Like, all I wanted was just to be okay. I didn't want to feel amazing. I didn't want to feel the strongest man on earth. I just wanted to feel okay. I just wanted to like get above water, because I was drowning.
Yeah.
I was exhausted. I was literally mentally and physically just drained. I couldn't eat. I would have like maybe 2 sips of coffee in the morning and some water, and I would barely eat or touch my food. I felt so sick. And I went to this doctor, and I handed her this paper, and I handed her the timeline of my life, kind of, and she's like, well, we got PTSD we got to work on. We've got some, treatment-resistant depression, because I listed all the medications, and I handed her this paper, and she's like, how would you feel about trying ketamine for your depression? And I she brought me through the entire process of, showing me the room where I would get the IV put in, and the, room where I would do the treatment, and how they would watch and how they would regiment it. And she also recommended a cognitive behavioral therapist to speak with.
In conjunction with the ketamine.
In conjunction with the ketamine.
Yeah, good.
And she also recommended an antidepressant, Zoloft, at a low dose, which I resisted as long as I possibly could, which I'll get into in a moment.
Sure.
But I went home and I talked to my wife, and she said, I think this is a good idea. It's very safe. It's used regularly. And, I went for an EKG, and I went for blood work, and I went for, everything, kind of dotted all the I's and crossed the T's. And I went in so timid and hopeful, and pleases and I'm sorry's and thank yous, and like shaking, Never had such physical manifestations of my depression before. And the minute the needle hit my hand, I passed out cold, and I hit the ground. No ketamine.
I'm laughing
just
only because
literally,
I know that this happens. But yeah, go ahead, keep going.
I passed out. I've passed out a lot with needles
So
and
have
stuff.
I.
And what I've noticed,
So have I.
it's the vasovagal. Are you familiar with this thing where it's like your blood pressure spikes and then drops?
Yeah.
So like, even if you're looking at the bottom shelf of paint and you get up too fast and you get that kind of staticky TVs around your head, whole thing, I get that. So the needle hit my hand, and it was kind of funny because in this room, there's 9 beautiful leather recliners, right? That you could sit in, and, that's where you would have your ketamine experience. And then in one back room, there's a hospital bed. And that was my room, because they didn't want me sitting in the chair, because, so I had to get my IV administered at the bedside. And I'm like, guys, can I please go to the chair? And they're like, no. So it became a little joke, but I finally, they brought me over and we did it. And I had, a tranquil music on, kind of just like classical or acoustic guitar. And essentially the way it works, for someone who's not privy, is you have a pulse oximeter on your hand, you have a blood pressure monitor on your arm, and you have the IV, and it's a 90-minute experience. The first 45 minutes is the ketamine administration, and then they, I think, shut it off for another 45 of, let's say, like saline or something. And then once your blood pressure is finally like at a level that they're happy with, because sometimes your blood pressure will drop, you're free to go, and you can't drive, so you Uber home or whatever. And that was funny too, because in the beginning, the Uber driver's like, "How are you today?" And I'm like, "Don't talk to me. I don't want to talk, whatever." And then on the ride home, I'm like hanging out the window, like, "I love everybody, man. This is great." So even that was a sign that things were working. But immediate, gentle, lucid, dissociative, psychedelic feeling of just like a breath of relief and weight lifting off, and a lightness that I really can't put in any other way, of just feeling like I was literally like rising, ascending. A lot of that feeling of kind of like floating to the top of the room, or experiencing these sort of lucid dreams where I was there as an observer, and I was there as the, let's say, first person or the character, and I'm able to see myself maybe experiencing situations that would give me fight or flight or anxiety or panic, but that was shut off. So I didn't have the ability to flee or have fear. I just had to watch me go through these experiences. One in particular that's very vivid was I was approaching a waterfall of sand, and I thought that if I crashed into it, I was going to die. But I couldn't stop myself. So I just had to take the ride. And I went right through the sand to the other side, and then I was in a whole other realm, whole other reality. And I had the wherewithal to go like, I didn't die. So we don't have to worry about that anymore. And then it was on to the next thing, I'm claustrophobic in nature. So I had experiences where I felt like I was almost like, not in a coffin, but like laying in a thing where, everything was very close to me, and a train rolling over me or whatever. And I just felt I lived.
Yeah.
So I think it freed up the speed bumps that I would put in front of me and it let me just go on these adventures that maybe before in life I would just kind of shy away from because I was scared, and I would have very beautiful experiences, very confusing experiences. I sometimes feel more like it was almost like I had sort of nitrous oxide at the dentist type feelings on the ketamine, where you can almost like see music and hear smells, and that kind of like sensory change thing, more than a mushroom psychedelic is what I mean. Like if I had to explain it to someone who's never done it before, I kind of feel like it was that, but it was incredibly gentle. It wasn't at all terrifying. It wasn't at all overwhelming or like rocket ship takeoff, like a DMT thing, or I always felt okay. I maybe had 2 or 3 times total where my lips started to kind of tingle, and my nose and my sinus area and felt like it was swelling up, and I kind of needed to sort of like give them a wave and be like, I'm feeling, something, and I don't know if they turned it down or what, but it fixed itself, and everything was great. And the people who I were with, extremely professional, extremely made me feel safe. And but the trip, the experiences themselves were, if anybody meditates or has lucid dreams or any astral type of projection or anything like that, it felt a lot like that. And it felt like a meditation I had one time where I remember I was looking at something in the sky that was so big, my two eyes couldn't see it. But when I looked with another eye, I could see it. I don't know if that makes sense, but I had a lot of that. I had a real lot of that. And the moral of most of the experiences where I got to two different points, almost two different checkpoints in the ketamine trips that I had. And one was that, like, it doesn't matter. Like, I would see a thing that I thought was life or death, and I'd go, oh, like, almost like I was looking at it, like, instead of looking through the glass, I was looking into the tank. And I'm like, oh, that doesn't matter. Like, and it was just like a friendly, like, oh. And then the other thing I would have a realization with on most of them was, like, if it all ends now, like, if I just keep going and end up in the next existence, if I die, like, it's okay. Like, I'm totally okay with dying right now. And what's hilarious is one of the times I had that moment, the security system tripped, and all of a sudden, like red lights and all this stuff's going on.
Nothing like a real life emergency.
No, I didn't mean it, dude. Like, I got more to do. Like, stop.
Oh my God.
So I'm kind of like in the depths of ketamine, and this is going off, and I open my eyes, and it's very like, you know, and I look at the window, and there's doctors in masks like waving, and it's like, and I'm like, I'm just going to lay here. Like, what am I going to do? Get up and run? So I'm just going to lay here, and they, you know, it all worked out. And it's so hilarious. Like, I just always have to have those silly errors, you know? Yeah. One time I tried to, like, the song was so beautiful that I was listening to, I tried to hit, like, listen again. And I ended up putting on, like NPR news, and it's like, you know, all this horrible news, and I'm like, no, and I just threw my headphones across the room. And so there's always funky stuff like that. But what I would do is schedule my cognitive behavioral therapy sessions immediately after.
Smart.
One thing I didn't really love about the way that I was doing, well, let me back up. The first 4 weeks, you do 2 sessions a week. So Monday and Thursday, I would do sessions. So by the end of, like, the first month, I've already had like 8 or 10 sessions. You take a GAD-7 test with generalized anxiety disorder test. That's like, you know, I feel I'd be better off. Like, the world would be better off without me. Never, seldom, sometimes, always, you know, things like that. It's lots of questions like that. And that score plus your weight would determine, I think, your dosage. So I would go to this therapist in the beginning of I was really convinced that, like, I wasn't coming back. Like, I was in such anxiety. I thought, like, this is me now. Like, I've broke my brain. I overdid it with drugs, or I you know, this or that. Like, I smoked pot, and I'm in there now. Like, I really thought it was over.
Yeah.
And through the cognitive behavioral therapy and through the ketamine, I learned tools and trust together, where I could trust that my thoughts aren't real. And you know, cognitive behavioral therapy will teach you, okay, I'm scared of X. And then you learn, like, on a scale of 1 to 100, what are the odds that this is real? And what evidence supports that this is real? Is there evidence that supports that it's not real? And if this does happen, what's the worst case scenario? If what you're thinking is true, will you die? Will you go to jail? Will you this? Will you that? And she made me do homework. Like, I had to come in with these filled out.
And that's a big, just to jump in real quick, because that's a big thing about this conversation, and psychedelics for sure, but any kind of healing and any kind of healing modality is the inspiration is really nothing without the action to back it up. Like, if we're not taking what we get from our ketamine series or our ayahuasca 3-day or our whatever, or our retreat where we talk about cool things and we get inspired, So what would you say about that? Like, what did integration after this stuff look like for you? Because I think that's a huge important part that we don't want to be promoting. Just go and do a ketamine series and boop, you're fixed and it's all good.
Yeah.
What comes after?
Or
what came
100%.
after for you, I guess, is the more the question.
And I'll even go back to the mushroom experiences because that was instant integration.
Yeah.
That was immediate. And I wanted that with the ketamine, but it wasn't available at this facility. So after, as a whole other sidebar, I've kind of been like looking for a more integrative ketamine opportunity.
Meaning what?
So that's where I'm.
What do you mean was
meaning
right? Like
immediate,
the cognitive behavioral therapy was right after, or what? What do you mean? Was it? What was immediate after?
Well, I would have liked someone in the room with me when I was doing the ketamine.
Okay.
And that's what I'd like moving forward. Because I think now now I've done it at least 30 or so times that I know what I don't know. You know, the 10,000 hours thing is true with psychedelics.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of become more of an expert on, all right now I think I might be able to kind of materialize a thought. And I wish someone was here to hear it, instead of afterwards trying to remember it. So that's very important. But what I did
it's a challenging thing, right? When you're in the experience.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
When you're in the experience of a psychedelic journey of any kind, departing from the internal dialogue and going to an external dialogue and trying to communicate and return it back and forth can completely derail the, where that train would have gone if we allow ourselves to stay in it. And, I can think about one of my own experiences where I gained ultimate clarity that I was looking for. And I really just needed to stay the course internally to follow through to fruition, the intention that I had set for myself for that journey. And then, I had that was a magic pill moment where I came out of the other side with the answer in my hand. But then it's been 5 years and I am still living the life of integrating that new version of me who has the answer, going, how do I live as a person who now knows this is the way I want to be, or this is the version of me who I want to continue working on being, but now I've got to take that forward and make it part of my daily practice.
100%. It's a very challenging thing when you're in that moment. And, even to bring in one of the tools that I use during stand-up, I put my phone on the stool and record all my sets. So if something comes out in the middle of a set and I'm like, ooh, there's a thought, I can go back and listen to it, right? So I even asked the doctor I was working with, I'm like, can I have like a can I just let a camera run in here? Can I just put something, and I needed my phone to play music. So I was like, and another, to your point, Jason, earth time doesn't matter, right? When we're in the psychedelic space, the earth clock doesn't matter. So if I'm saying something slowly, if I go, love and fear, that might be the only thing I need to trigger a revelation I had. So if someone is at least in there to write that down and go, let's talk about love and fear when I'm done, or when I'm in that second 45 minutes, that is a pivotal, open, soft baby head kind of moment where you can get in there and move some stuff around. So I think just integration is there's the marathon of integration and then there's the sprint of integration. So I think that it's important to have the sprint because that's how we train for the marathon,
Love that distinction.
I think it's important to have someone to talk to immediately. And I've came up with some good ideas for jokes on the ketamine too, and I lost those in the ether, but I had a couple that I got through, so it was a good creative time as well.
Well, sorry, go ahead if you have.
No, go
One
ahead,
of the things that this is sort of a slight shift, and we're sort of coming toward the end, but
Oh, I'm sorry if I'm
no,
going too long.
no, goodness, no.
That's what we're here for.
We have plenty
Yeah.
of time. We have plenty of time. It's more that we don't want to keep you forever.
No, I'm cool to keep going. I mean, I think it's important to talk about.
Yeah.
And, you know, just to put a quick, you know, end on that other thing, I just want to say that, you know, because I don't want to leave it like a cliffhanger or anything, but little by little, I really started to just feel that fear that was so debilitating and crippling, and that instant anxiety just started to dissipate. Okay. So to give a quick kind of comparison, you know, it's like lane assist on a car. And if you're inside the lines, that's kind of like rational thought, right? And then you can become overly optimistic or overly pessimistic, kind of fast lane, slow lane. And I didn't have lane assist. I would get into the breakdown lane and just kind of pull over and have a panic attack and think that my car was broken and the trip's over and whatever. After the ketamine and the therapy, lane assist started to work, where I would drift into the other lane and it would go beep, 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 and kind of I would go back to normal, you know?
Yep.
We lost Jason, I think.
Yeah, he'll jump back in, I'm sure.
Okay. So anyway, that helped quite a bit. And I just started to little by little feel better. And I felt okay. Like I asked them to make me. And, you know, so I really just want to point, and it's long lasting. And I haven't done. Oh, and to tie up also, like I did incorporate like a very small amount of Zoloft into the mix, because a lot of OCD kind of came into, you know, the play or whatever. And the thing that I like about ketamine in particular is that you can do it in conjunction with your, you know, SSRI medication, because it works on a different part of the brain. So it actually, I think you know, some people have theories that, you know, Zoloft is killing your brain and ketamine's making more, and it's a contrasting thing. All I could say is, for me, again, not for anybody else, but it's been a really excellent experience. And the goal is to get off of that.
Yeah.
And it's just a teeny tiny baby dose, but it just kind of helps with the obsessive compulsive part of things. So I feel better than I ever have. I look back at that person who was going through that intense panic and depression and self-doubt and criticism, and I literally feel like it was another lifetime. I feel like it I know it was me, but I don't recognize who that was or what. And that's, I mean, it's life-changing. It's literally life-changing, and I can't give more thanks and credit to the cognitive behavioral therapist and the doctor that administered the ketamine. And, you know, without them and my wife and my family, and, you know, I honestly don't know. I don't know what would have happened. I mean, I don't know how much more fight I had in me. And now I'm like, I don't know. I'm feeling lighter and happier than I ever have in my entire life. So,
Mike, thank you so much for sharing that valuable insight. And I'm so happy to hear that you're on that side of the lane, because I think we can all identify with exactly that scenario that you described of, like, my lane assist is not working and I'm headed for the shoulder. Never mind the shoulder, I'm headed for the ditch.
Yeah.
You know, we've all been there. So really grateful for this vulnerable, humble share. And especially speaking as another man to man, thank you for being willing to be vulnerable in those areas, because this toxic masculine stereotype that we've been impressed upon us, that we are supposed to be invulnerable, that we're supposed to be stoic, strong, silent, and not express emotion, pain, fear, anything like that, is a bunch of bullshit. It's got to go. That's gone with our grandfathers. Sorry, bye-bye. And it takes voices like your own to step up and to charge forward fearlessly, full of fear, charge forward, full of fear towards being our honest, true, real selves.
Thank you so much, man.
You know?
And same to you.
Yeah.
You guys are both doing, it's awesome to have these experiences. And, I was able to go speak at the Colorado, at PS 2023.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, we were there. We were there.
Yeah, we were there. Yeah.
And I did it was called Dented Cans.
Awesome.
And I basically told this well, not exact, but just went up kind of and opened up and talked about it. And it was really awesome to have people come up after and just, be happy that they heard it. And I guess to me, that's really all that matters now. And I'm going to continue talking about it. And it's interesting to, from the perspective about men, I always loved Jack Kerouac and I always loved Ken Kesey. And, for like two writers, right? Now those are two dudes that like went to college for sports. Like Kesey was a wrestler. Kerouac went on a full ride to Columbia to play football. These were dudes that drank and did drugs and, loved women and red-blooded men, but also were able to, cry on a page and let it out and be in touch with both, sides of themselves or whatever. And now I think I understand why I liked them so much, because I knew that they were the ones that kind of were like, no, that's okay. It's possible to be,
to be all of those things,
vulnerable and all those things.
Yeah.
It's okay to like football and, cry at
be a poet laureate.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Right.
So
it's
I think that we're, this generation is starting to understand that. And I really think it's great. I mean, we need that vulnerability and we need to be able to kind of, have difficult conversations sitting around a table where maybe, other conversations were had years and years ago.
Yeah.
So,
and Mike, that's what I want to acknowledge you for myself. I was listening to, I think it was your interview with Liz Glazer, where you shared about, and maybe it wasn't, maybe it's a different episode, but regardless, you shared about how you were opening for one of your mentors, right? And you were worried about doing the new stuff and fucking up on his watch, right? And bombing in front of his crowd and making, and once you were like, man, can I, he gave you that permission to like go out there and just fucking bomb if that's what it was going to take to do your new stuff. And so I fully acknowledge you for that, yes, in comedy and life, in that creative part of your career. But that I feel like also is very, very much represented in your willingness to step into your mental health, your healing journey, your work with psychedelics. Who the hell knows what we get from those journeys? Like you said in your story, your beautiful share about that, with psilocybin, how you would never have predicted that as something that would have been necessary and needed for you. And so that practice of surrender and we're talking about vulnerability, but man, vulnerability, right? Like that's real stuff. And so I really acknowledge you for that and for being a leader in that version of being. So
thank you.
Yeah, man. And
thank you.
Honestly, we could talk forever. And if there's more, like, what did we not talk about that you really want to make sure you say before we go? And where and how can people connect with you and find you, support you, all of those things?
Okay. Thank you. All right. I will say that one of the things that I'm saying now on stage that's new is about the ketamine experience, and it's getting the best response. And I'm not going to say it here now.
Yes.
You're going to have to wait till the next special.
I like it.
Or come see me live.
Tease.
And
I'm
my
into
dates
it.
are at MikeFinoia.com. And I'll do all that in a minute. But here's the thing. What I have found to be the biggest struggle now, because Kesey once said, nothing, you pay for everything. Nothing comes for free, right? So I have a lot of trouble now tolerating people who aren't willing to do the work. That's hard. That's very hard. And it's a thing where it's kind of like, you know, when you tune into a certain frequency, it's hard to untune or detune, and your bullshit filter becomes extremely vigilant. And I understand, and I want to say too that, like, you know, this year plus of work was long and painful and scary. And, you know, there were times where I kind of like would look back and I'm like, is there an end or beginning anymore to this tunnel? Like, I had to get to the very deep bottom of myself and stay down there until I could, you know, find the other end. So it's not easy work, and I think the work scares people. And I'm trying to become more accepting, or maybe more sympathetic to the folks that maybe aren't ready to do it, or maybe will never be ready to do it. Maybe it's just too terrifying. But that's a challenge now. And I think that might be the double-edged butter knife of doing psychedelic work, is that you go to a new place and you're now set up on a different soil, and you kind of look at the other soil and you're like, I don't want to put my feet in that sand ever again, you know, and it's a different world now. And there's no going back. And that's important to realize. So, and in this world of, you know, two different versions of the truth and hatred, and, you know, Wilco has this song, and one of the lyrics is, there's no middle when the other side would rather kill than compromise. And that line sticks out to me quite a bit, because it's like, boy, is that not our world today? Like, rather kill than compromise. So we have to realize that, you know, not everyone is doing this work, or not everyone is seeking a happiness. They're just accepting whatever they're being handed as, you know, that's it. So what I'm trying to work on now is how to practice that, like just being forgiving of, you know, not jumping to conclusions, not, you know, if my anxiety thing goes off, just, all right, maybe I step away from this situation and put time in between, you know, them and my reactions. And, you know, but that's a difficult thing. I think that's really, and I don't mean just for me, I think probably for anybody that's involved in psychedelics, like that's something that maybe needs to be a conversation, because a lot of people aren't doing the work. I'm glad more are, but, you know, that should be a doctorate for some therapist to figure out, is like how to be okay with folks that are okay not being okay.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's tough.
Oof,
so
totally, man. Well,
Ram Dass has a great quote on that, and it's perfect.
Yeah. So, well, I guess I haven't reached that level yet, but
I too have not reached that level.
Yeah.
Oh my
but
God.
he's the
Perfect.
man.
Oh my God. Mike, I can't let this interview end without at least telling you that I did stand-up comedy once. I did a stand-up class in Burlington, Vermont, and
where at Vermont Comedy Club?
Totally.
Nathan and Natalie, I love them to death. They're very good friends of mine.
Oh, I love that.
Yes.
I was
shout out to that club. They're the best.
It was awesome. And I have so much respect for stand-up comedians. I had so much respect for comedians in general, but why I bring this up is, like, I was 100% atrocious in the best, most wonderful way. You think, okay, I'm a pro skydiver. The scariest thing I ever did was walk out onto that stage. I'm not joking. My knees were literally like knocking. Literally.
That blows my mind.
Oh my God.
That blows my mind. Can I go skydiving with you sometime?
Yes, please do.
Because I want to do it before. My wife and I have said that's something that we really want to do. And you want to know what's very weird? And I've been meaning, I didn't know when I was going through the worst of my depression, I threw out to my wife, let's go skydiving. Because Two reasons. One's kind of like dark, but I'm like, if it doesn't work out, what other way to go?
Yep.
But
that was my life too. Yeah.
But also I'm like, I wanted to scare the hell out of myself to know that life was worth living.
Yeah.
And, and I thought jumping out of a plane would be the best thing to do.
Let's talk about it. I mean, because I live in the New York area myself too, so we're close.
Great.
So we can figure this out. If your calling toward it as medicine continues, definitely we'll figure it out.
If we can, maybe we should do it in Vermont.
That would be amazing.
Full circle.
Yes.
Yeah. That's wonderful. You guys are so great. And if anybody's interested, they can. My YouTube channel is just everything is just at Mike Finoia, Finoia. My podcast with Oteil Burbridge is called Comes a Time Podcast. If you don't know him, he's 17-year bassist for the Allman Brothers. Now going on 10 years playing with the Grateful Dead members and all their iterations. And we've had amazing guests. I mean, it's just, we have I think, close to 200 episodes.
Amazing.
Just wild. And my other podcast is Dented Cans, where I talk to other comics about their dents and stuff. And MikeFinoia.com for my dates and my specials out there and clips and so on and so forth. So I'm on the road all year. Come say hi and, come see a show. And this is definitely, a world that I'm excited to be in, talking with you guys. And I think that, anybody who's like hip to it or interested in it or involved in it, or I think we all need to be doing more together.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So anytime you guys want to chat or anytime online, offline, whatever, let's do it.
Thank you so much, Mike. And let me just, again, respect to the truth tellers, to those of you who do step up on stage and share your versions of what is going on here in the world with fearless vulnerability. So thank you and respect. And I'm on the journey there with you. We're definitely doing this together.
And I'm definitely coming to one of your shows in the city.
Anytime. Literally, let me know. Anytime you want.
Mike, you're awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, everyone, seriously, for listening, for spending your valuable, valuable time, energy, and heart with us. Every bit of it makes a difference.
Yeah, thank you. We would love it if you could show your support for the show by subscribing on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, or follow us on Instagram. You can always click the like button, leave us a comment, or share an episode with somebody directly.
Like we mentioned, every month we host integration coaching circles. So much good work is happening there. You are invited to join us. Go to trustthejourney.today/integration. The Trust the Journey family includes these integration coaching circles and our private Facebook group where we connect and support each other. Join us by going to our website, trustthejourney.today, and click the orange Patreon button.
Yeah, thanks. It's your support and engagement that make the show possible. Thank you. We're here to connect with you. Feel free to DM us anytime on Instagram. We're at trustthejourney.today. Thank you. We love you.
We love you.
Keep laughing, keep loving, and keep trusting the journey.